Chapter 34 Anomalies at Gelendzhik. Dear readers, everything I have written in these books I either heard from Anastasia or saw and experienced myself. All the events I describe are real events from my own life, and my descriptions, especially in the first couple of books, included people's real names and addresses, a decision I later had cause to regret. These people came to be bothered more and more by curious busybodies. Another thorny problem has been all the various rumors, events, and phenomena attached to both myself and Anastasia. The particular interpretations of these events, and consequently the particular conclusions drawn therefrom, have also been upsetting. Many of them I cannot agree with at all. For example, I am dead set against worshipping the dolmens. I believe that we can and must communicate with the dolmens on the basis of respect, but not worship them. The readers of the Anastasia books comprise people of various faith groups and religious confessions, with various levels of education. I believe that anyone's interpretation of events is worth our attention. Everyone has the right to their own opinion, but when expressing it, they should say, "This is my opinion, my suggestion." And of course, one should not mystify everything right off, and should certainly not mystify either me or Anastasia. Otherwise, one may transform Anastasia from a man, albeit not a very ordinary man, into some kind of extraordinary being. Might it not be that she is, in fact, a supremely normal man? And we are the ones who are abnormal? So please, excuse me for getting carried away here with my own opinions. It's on account of my being disturbed by a particular set of circumstances. Rumors are circulating lightning fast at the moment about the fiery sphere with which Anastasia communicates. I ask my readers to recall my various descriptions of it in previous books, how this sphere appeared next to Anastasia in emergency situations, how it first appeared when little Anastasia was crying over her parents' grave, and then taught her to take her first little baby steps, and how it defended her when she was attacked. To her grandfather's question, "What is it?" she replied, "I would call it good." Yes, she does communicate with it, but even she does not fully comprehend what kind of natural phenomena it is. Now why have I all of a sudden brought up the fiery sphere which appeared out of nowhere? Because according to a mass of witnesses, it was this very sphere that appeared in the sky over Gelendzhik and stirred up a good deal of turmoil. Now rumors are being spread by detractors to the effect that Anastasia can practically bomb anyone she doesn't like with the help of this sphere, and that she communicates not only with the forces of light, but also with the dark forces. And here the readers themselves are adding fat to the fire. I have already had a request from the Taups to send this sphere to the Sochi City Hall so that they might see the light the way the Gelendzhik Council did. I shall now attempt, dear readers, to offer you a true account of what really happened in Gelendzhik, and I would ask you to read it calmly and understandingly. A local non-profit organization in Gelendzhik was preparing to hold a readers' conference on the Anastasia books. The relationship of the organization's board with the city council was, to put it mildly, tense. And in Book 2 I had already given a rather unflattering portrayal of the old city leadership. Against a background like that, you can just imagine what happened. Sometime after noon on the 17th of September 1999, on the eve of the readers' conference, a wind blew up in the city, and a thunderstorm began. All at once a fiery sphere appeared on the small square in front of the city hall. Its subsequent behavior, people now say, was very much like that of Anastasia's sphere. The sphere which appeared over Gelendzhik somehow evaded the lightning rods of the surrounding buildings and made contact with a tree standing in the middle of the square. Then the sphere emitted several fiery spheres or rays of somewhat smaller proportions. One of them flew into the mayor's office, flew around the room right in front of the onlookers, and then flew out. A second sphere flew into the window of the deputy mayor, Galina Nikolaevna, and hovered in the air for a while. Then it went over to the window and etched on the window pane a strange symbol that nobody has yet been able to erase, and then flew off. Subsequent rumors have it that the Galenzik Administrative Council has become holy or enlightened. They say that right after the incident with the fiery sphere, the council decided to adopt measures for a more favorable reception of the readers of my books coming to the city from out of town, to fix up the dolmens in the area, hold an annual inspirational songwriters festival, and a lot more besides, which it was unwilling to do before. Rumors of what had happened spread, together with the affirmation that Anastasia's sphere had visited Galenzik. I tried countering that it was only ball lightning, and that its resemblance in behavior to what I had described in the book was purely coincidental, and the city council would have adopted some kind of resolution regardless. But they would have none of it. They immediately began arguing that there are no coincidences, and besides, it wasn't just one coincidence in this case, but a whole chain. And they further declared that when coincidences follow one after another in a chain, it can be termed a pattern. Of course, one could say that the coincidences had come together in a chain. For now, at least, there was no logical explanation for the sphere bypassing the lightning rods. Why did it make contact with the big tree standing in the square, flare up and make thundering sound over it, yet refrain from destroying it and flying over to the city council windows? Why did it fly right into the offices of the very people capable of taking decisions with respect to readers coming to the city? Why did the city council render a favorable decision on a whole lot of questions immediately afterward? Why did the chairman of the municipal assembly take it upon herself to personally welcome the conference delegates the next day, and so forth? According to one recent rumor, the mayor of Galenzik and the whole administrative apparatus has changed so much that now Galenzik will start to flourish, and become, as Anastasia said, richer than Jerusalem or Rome. Another rumor has it that the sphere simply struck fear in everyone. Upon my arrival at Galenzik, I met with the mayor and her deputy. I saw the symbol the sphere had etched on the glass, and I touched it. I sensed an unusual aroma in the office, something similar to incense or sulfur, but there was no sensation of fright. On the contrary, Galina Nikolaevna, the deputy mayor, for example, even seemed more cheery than on previous occasions. She also recounted to me how everything had happened, and asked me whether I thought this might be some kind of sign. Altogether, the way things turned out, the theory about ordinary ball lightning was quite unacceptable, and I got accused of simplifying the situation. I don't deny that I really did try to simplify things, and not only this situation. Why? Because I have heard reports about how certain religious leaders are frightening people with their speculations on Anastasia's unusual powers, saying that these powers were not of God, and that Anastasia was not a man. They're writing articles about this in their religious journals. I can only imagine the exaggerations that will now come up with the appearance of the sphere at Galenzik. I'm not about to try to either prove or refute the identification of the fiery sphere at Galenzik with Anastasia's. There's no sense in it now. Everybody's going to stick to their own opinion. All I want is to try to reason a little together with you, dear readers, as to what kind of forces the fiery sphere at Galenzik might have represented. The Bible says, "By their fruits ye shall know them." Well then, what are the fruits? First, the fiery sphere caused no damage to the city hall. Even the glass on which it etched its symbol wasn't broken. The lingering aroma in the office was not an unpleasant one. Galina Nikolaevna, the occupant of the office, spoke with me in the presence of 4 people, and none of them detected any sense of fear in her. The sphere made thundering noises over the tree in the square, and there was a bright flare. People said it looked as though the tree itself was flaring up. But there it is, still growing away in perfect health. The city council resolved to improve the level of service to readers from out of town. It also made a decision to offer regular, properly organized excursions to the dolmens Anastasia spoke about. I myself cannot see a single negative consequence. Therefore, the fruits must be judged positive. Anastasia says about the fiery sphere that it acts completely self-sufficiently, that it cannot be ordered about. One can only make a request of it. In my books, I am attempting to describe, as accurately as I can, situations I have seen with my own eyes, experienced with my own feelings, or heard with my own ears. As for the incident with the fiery sphere at Galenzik, well, everyone can put forth their own version of events, but I certainly don't want anyone using this incident for the purpose of frightening people. Besides, if one were to continue along that line, then it is possible to mystify the most mundane situations. Now, people are even starting to say that this fiery sphere assisted me in making my presentation at Galenzik. But that's not true. I don't have any connection with it at all, and the press has not been blameless in feeding these rumors. The respected magazine Ognoyok printed a long article in which the author states that an experiment is being conducted on this country on a major scale. Specifically, he notes about me that he talked on stage for 8 hours straight. I haven't seen oratory like that for a long time. And another paper adds, through all this he remained fresh as a cucumber. All these descriptions, to put it mildly, are exaggerated and inaccurate. In the first place, at the conference, I spoke not for 8 hours straight, but only 6. 2 hours were added from my presentation on the following day. As far as assistance goes, it really was there, but with no mysticism. On the eve of the Galenzik conference, Anastasia came to see me, telling me I should get a good night's sleep. She offered me a tea extract that she had brought with her from the taiga for me to drink just before bedtime. I agreed, since lately I hadn't been able to sleep much at night. Then, when I lay down, she sat down beside me, took my hand, as she used to do back in the taiga. I described this in my chapter, Touching Paradise, and I fell asleep, as though literally flying off somewhere. Whenever she did this in the taiga, a sense of peace would always come over me. I woke the next morning to see a beautiful day out. I felt in top shape, and my mood was cheerful. For breakfast, Anastasia offered me only cedar milk, saying it was better not to eat any meat, since a lot of energy would be spent on digesting it. And after the cedar milk, I didn't even feel like having meat. Whenever I have cedar milk, I never feel like having anything else. When I gave my talk to the readers at the conference, Anastasia was not beside me. She stood quietly for a while in the auditorium among the readers, then went off and disappeared altogether. But after the publication of the articles and the rumors giving a mystic interpretation of my presentation at the conference, I began to wonder myself whether Anastasia had somehow been helping me. And I said to her, "Don't tell me, Anastasia, you quite forgot I was supposed to look tired, at least toward the end of my presentation. Why did you let these people indulge in mystical speculation?" She laughed and replied, "What kind of mysticism can there be in someone well rested talking in a good mood with his friends? As for your speaking for so long, this was because your thought is still confused. You tried to grasp hold of a number of topics at once. It was possible to have phrased it more clearly and concisely, but you were not able to do that. Also, on account of the fact that your shoes were too tight and squeezing your feet, so that the blood had trouble circulating through your veins. You see now how utterly simple in fact it all was? There was absolutely no mysticism in my presentation." Dear readers, I'm receiving more and more letters from you asking why neither I nor the Anastasia Foundation are responding to the critical articles in the press, to the insults and accusations of bigotry directed at me and my readers in general. What a waste of time that would be. Anyway, what's the sense of responding to people who are simply out to provoke a scandal? In November, one journalist by the name of I'm not going to spell it out in full, no need to immortalize him, saw fit to publish one and the same article under different titles in no less than 5 publications at the same time. He changed the titles, transposed a few sentences in the text, and signed himself with different names. He naturally disparages me and then rants away with the diatribe on morals, ethics, and commercialism. His editors will deal with him themselves before too long. I know how distasteful such a situation can be for editors, and it's considered highly unethical in journalist circles. After all, each publication paid him an honorarium on the understanding they were getting an exclusive. What's the point of my arguing with him? Maybe the poor fellow needs the money to buy himself a decent meal. And as for the muck and lies he dishes out, I don't think they'll ever stick to Anastasia. They will all fall back on him. Let's face it, Anastasia's a pretty hot topic right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if a few more publications tried to capitalize on her popularity. After all, you readers number more than 1 million already. Let's say I start a polemic with a tabloid of maybe 50,000 subscribers. You are naturally going to want to read it, and that means you'll be giving a huge boost to their circulation. There's absolutely no sense in arguing with them. You know yourselves, after all, whether you're bigots or not. If you really want to get back at a publication, your best bet is simply to refuse to buy it, or cancel your subscription if you have one. As for me, the only way I can communicate with you is through my books, so now I'm going to try and answer some of your questions. First of all, at the present time, I'm not engaged in any business activities. I spend my whole time writing. I don't belong to any religious group. I'm simply trying to come up with my own sense of what life's all about. But the criticisms and fabrications directed at me and Anastasia are likely to increase. Seems a lot of people see Anastasia as an obstacle to their own pet plans. You can bet they'll expose themselves sooner or later, but one thing that seems pretty clear to me now is that the Siberian girl has been seen as one hell of a threat to more than a few religious groups, and at the same time to some financial industrial empires both here in Russia and abroad. They're the ones that are persistently blowing up the questions to the press. Does Anastasia exist or not? And just who is Migre? And then they give their own answer. No, she doesn't, and Migre's a penny-pinching entrepreneur. In actual fact, they are more aware than just about anyone else of Anastasia's existence. But they feel they have been better and quicker than we have at evaluating the information coming from Anastasia. They even laugh at those who question Anastasia's existence. Think about it. Would anyone listening to information on the radio question the existence of the station broadcasting it? But while some self-professed wise guys have caught up in an endless round of asking, does she exist or not? In the meantime, there has been an intense buying up and exporting of cedar nuts in the Irkutsk, Tomsk, and Novosibirsk regions. For foreign currency yet. According to reports out of Novosibirsk and Tomsk, Chinese representatives have been involved. In 1999 was a banner year for cedar nut crops in many parts of Siberia, but the Novosibirsk medical factory is not increasing its output of cedar oil. There is a shortage of cedar nuts, the same nuts which are being made into expensive medicines in the West, where the manufacturers are taking great pains to conceal the identity of the main ingredient. Remember I wrote back in Book 1 about how they were shipping cedar nuts abroad? And when I tried searching for information about cedar nut oil, I got a warning from Poland to back off. This year they've managed again to hold their own. But as to the future, well, we shall see. In the next book I shall tell about a certain surprise being prepared by Anastasia. I am an entrepreneur. My idea was to write the books I promised and then get back to business. And I never hid my intentions from anyone. In fact, I wrote about them right in Book 2. But now my plans have changed. Let other Siberian entrepreneurs compete for trade with these Western smart Alecs. My plans change because those behind critical publications continue to insult and frighten readers, labeling as bigots anybody who bothers to read my books, which they consider silly and devoid of literary value. Granted, I don't have any higher education or experience in the literary field, and those who have these are irritated by the popularity of my books. They are especially upset by the fact that, given my level of education, I still refuse to submit my work to editors. And they are simply furious over my publication of the 500-page collection of readers' letters and poems entitled The Soul of Russia Sings in Anastasia's Ray. Again, I didn't allow anyone to edit this. I wrote the preface myself, saying that the collection was quite a historic publication. I still say this. How else could one characterize it? Containing, as it does, letters and musings on life, on the purpose of man, on what people cherish in life. The letters and poems are sincere and written by people of different ages, different social situations, and religious inclinations. And this book has been pretty popular. In fact, its popularity has quite given the lie to the myth, and the modern man is interested only in crime novels and books about sex. People are eager to read poetry, even if it's not professionally written, but sincere nevertheless. I've been told on a number of occasions that because I've thrown out a challenge to the whole brotherhood of the pen and their erudition, I'm going to be wiped off the face of the map. Nobody will ever recognize me as a writer. But it wasn't my intention to challenge anyone as a writer. That was never my intention. But now, when the press is going so far as to attribute the popularity of my books to the fact that Russia is a stupid country, and that all my readers are fools and bigots, I have no choice but to respond to them. I shall be a writer. I'll do a little more practicing, study some more. I'll ask Anastasia for help, and I shall be a writer. I shall write new books and reprint the ones already published in the best printing houses in the world. I shall make the books about Anastasia and about the people of Russia today the best books of the millennium. This is how I shall respond to my present and future critics. But in the meantime, I'll simply say this to them. To my critics, I bid you farewell. I'm going off with Anastasia. Maybe she's a bit naive, but she's beautiful, kind, and sincere. We shall set off into our new millennium with more than 1 million readers in whose hearts a splendid and inspired image is alive and well. And what is in your hearts, critics? Phooey on you. Don't come crawling into our new millennium. Get the hell on back to your own. And even if you do come crawling into ours, you'll only choke on your own anger and envy. In our millennium, we're seeing the start of a new and splendid co-creation, where the air will be pure and there will be living water and fragrant gardens. And in that millennium, I shall continue publishing new collections with readers, poems, and letters. I shall call the series A People's Book. You may say that the poems therein are horrendous, but I say they are resplendent. I shall also put out some audio cassettes with songs of the bards, songs of soul, of Russia, of Anastasia. You may say that anyone can strum a guitar, but I say that these bards sing from the heart, and I would add, in Anastasia's words, not in any of the galaxies could there be found a single string capable of producing a better sound than that of the singing of the human soul. Dear readers, I extend to all of you my heartfelt greetings on the dawn of our millennium, on the dawn of your splendid co-creation on the earth. Who are we? That is what I have decided to call my next book. Respectfully, Vladimir Migre. To be continued. Hope for the World. Translators and editors afterward. Wow, 4 books translated and counting. Not a bad record. When one considers that just a year ago, as of this writing, not a single page of this series had yet come off the ringing Cedars presses in America. The series was launched with the publication of Book 1, Anastasia, in February 2005, followed by Book 2, The Ringing Cedars of Russia, and Book 3, The Space of Love, later in the year. And now co-creation makes 4, with at least 5 volumes still to come. And for this swift progression we have you to thank, dear readers, for your ongoing support and encouragement, without which the publication of new volumes would not have been possible. And needless to say, our gratitude goes out to our original source of support, the one whose inspiration inevitably underlies any legitimate act of co-creation. Equally noteworthy is the co-creation evident in the evolution of the original series itself, particularly the remarkable transformation of a hard-nosed Siberian commercial trader into one of Russia's best-selling authors. All the more amazing when one remembers that because of Vladimir Migre's initially choppy writing style, the original Russian manuscript of Anastasia was rejected by publisher after publisher, leaving him no choice but to bring out the first edition on his own. However, after several print runs of the self-published Anastasia sold out simply by word of mouth, with no advertising campaign or bookstore exposure, professional publishers were only too eager to reconsider, and it was not long before the volumes in the Ringing Cedars series were selling in millions. And now, in America, as elsewhere in the English-speaking world, Anastasia and its sequels are once again running counter to the book industry's long-held axioms. Even though corporate wholesalers decline to distribute the Ringing Cedars series to major retailers on the grounds that no book sells by word of mouth alone without a budget sufficient for a large advertising campaign, you, the readers, have proved otherwise, and the books have already spread around the globe without so much as a single advertisement or paid-for review in the press. Many of you have taken it upon yourself to purchase additional copies to give to the family and friends. Some have even gone further and become independent distributors, devoting considerable time and effort to make the book available in your local regions. Thus, as with their original editions, the success of the books in translation is once again the result of the resourcefulness of their readers who have let a new, splendid image live in their hearts. And the ideas these books set forth are already leaving their mark on the world. Indeed, there are signs that the world is beginning to grasp the message that there is in a better path to freedom, enlightenment, and happiness than the one along which it has been hurtling forward at breakneck speed, and that the new millennium on the earth which Vladimir Migre welcomes on the final pages of co-creation is already dawning with a most glorious radiance, both in Russia and abroad. Anastasia and the Ringing Cedars movement are already the subject of many day-to-day conversations and frequent reports in the press. Some pertinent examples are detailed below. Many might find these developments surprising. However, there have been numerous thinkers in both the distant and the recent past who have attempted to send a similar message to humanity, that it is on the wrong path. A few of these are worth noting here. In the late 19th century, the great Russian writer Leo Tolstoy took special note of how millions of people, men, women, and children, working 10, 12, or 15 hours a day are being transformed into machines and perishing in factories that manufacture unnecessary and harmful gadgets, while more and more villages become deserted. He further observed that in our time the human heart has been crying out more strongly than ever before against this false life, and calling people to the life demanded by revelation, reason, and conscience. At the same time, on the other side of the Atlantic, religious thinker and Christian Science founder Mary Baker Eddy was calling for a new approach to spiritual freedom from a mental slavery to long-held beliefs. She summed up this approach in her major work, Science and Health, originally published in 1875, as follows: "The despotic tendencies inherent in mortal mind and always germinating in new forms of tyranny must be rooted out through the action of the divine mind." In 1931, the American prophet Edgar Cayce established his Association for Research and Enlightenment to promote alternative solutions to humanity's problems based on, among other things, personal spirituality and holistic health. Interestingly enough, in one of his many readings he received an intimation that on Russia's religious development will come the greater hope of the world. 3 years later, the world-renowned humanitarian Dr. Albert Schweitzer republished the English translation of his book On the Edge of the Primeval Forest, while decrying the injustices inflicted on the indigenous peoples by European settlers. He intimates that the only path to successful colonialism is to turn the indigenous people into more productive workers by removing them from their native villages, families, and plots of land. Surprisingly, in the same piece, Schweitzer even holds labor compulsion, forcing the African native peoples to provide labor in return for material benefits bestowed on them, to be justifiable. Separating people from their own or their family's land is a social trend that goes back centuries. Thomas More described it in Book 1 of his Utopia, published in 1516, accusing greedy landowners of taking land from their peasant farmers for their own enrichment. Stalin's forced collectivization of agriculture in the Soviet Union in the 1930s, the loss of family farms in the United States in the years following World War II, and the establishing of huge factory farms in present-day Canada, nearly always achieved by buying up small family operations at an irresistible price, are further examples of concerted efforts on the part of the dark forces of the world to break man's ties to the land. This, in turn, has the effect of subduing his free will and destroying his independence. All of which gives added weight to Anastasia's proposal, so eloquently set forth by Vladimir Migre in Co-Creation, of bringing man, more specifically a man's family, and his land back together again in the form of what is called in Russian rodovoye pomestie, translated in this book as family domain, or kin's domain. This phrase is in turn linked in terms of both meaning and etymology to the Russian concept of rodina, which has been rendered motherland. In the Ringing Cedars series, though, it is equally translatable as native land. A brief word on the translation is in order here, inasmuch as both rodina and rodovoye pomesti convey concepts that have deep roots in the Russian historical context. Unparalleled in Western cultures, a good deal of thought, not to mention countless paragraphs of text and email correspondence, has gone into selecting the most appropriate English equivalents. We were aided in this decision in part by two of our readers who were asked to voice their thoughts on the selection of equivalent for rodina. Here is a brief excerpt from each of their responses. To me, motherland seems to invoke the most profound connection one can have to the land. It is the land in which you were likely born. But even more so, it is the land to which you have bonded through work, toil, sweat, blood, laughter, joy, and sustenance. I like motherland. It brings the life-giving nature of the earth to my heart. My mother, evoking feelings of tenderness and responsibility. There is much meaning to women in the idea of being a mother, and a common thread which relates to my personal life's experience, and has a place in the emotional file cabinet of the brain for most people. The relationship between life and the earth is shattered in this country, America, as people are so removed from the idea the earth gives us our life. The linkage made by the latter reader between one's personal life and the earth is significant. Early in chapter 24, appropriately entitled Take Back Your Motherland, People, Anastasia acknowledges that the whole earth could be a motherland, rodina, for each one of its inhabitants, and she designates a family's personal plot of land subsequently as one's kin's domain, as a piece of the motherland, thus linking the feelings associated with one personal family to the broader concept of the family of humanity as a whole. Indeed, perspectives on the concept of the family as revealed in Co-Creation are by no means confined to the world of the early 21st century we call home, but reach out in both time and distance to look at family not only through the lenses of the past, the present, and the future, but from beyond our usual sense of planetary space as well. On this basis, then, it may be seen that the concepts of both motherland and family domain reach far beyond the borders of Russia alone. In fact, as indicated above, there are signs that Anastasia appeals to take back your motherland is already resonating in the hearts of many people in many parts of the world. In May 2005, for example, a massive power outage in Moscow reminded many of Anastasia's words concerning the inevitable collapse of artificial life support systems. This one accident paralyzed Russia's capital city for several days in a row, and among other things resulted in the sewage from millions of dwellings being flushed into the Moskova River untreated. In a radio program devoted to possible solutions to this problem, one of Russia's most prominent ecologists and president of the Center for Russia's Environmental Policy, academic Alexei Yablokov, made pointed reference not only to E.F. Schumacher's book Small is Beautiful, but also to the hugely popular Anastasia movement of people building their family domains. In neighboring Latvia, journalist Lyudmila Stoma was curious about what was behind a movement of hundreds of people in Latgal province. All well-educated specialists in high demand in the labor market, relocating to a newly formed eco-village in a remote rural village. Upon investigation, she was amazed by what she could only describe as a new revolution. Over the past few years, Belarus and Ukraine have been experiencing a real eco-village boom. Thousands of families are building family domains on 1 hectare of land each, attaining remarkable self-sufficiency with only sparing use of all the technological achievements of the technocratic world. They are all united by the same goal, to build a paradise on the earth. She ended her article by wondering if the settlers, following Anastasia's advice in building their own family domains, might actually succeed where government subsidies had so miserably failed. In fact, thousands of new kin domains are being established each year, not only in Russia and Latvia, but in many other countries as well. And Dachnik Day, an annual celebration of our connectedness to Mother Earth on July 23rd, the idea of which was proposed in Book 2, The Ringing Cedars of Russia, only 8 years ago, has now become an international holiday, and in 2005 it was celebrated for the first time by readers of the series in both America and Canada. These are but a few examples of a growing worldwide phenomenon, rounded out by international readers, conferences, bards' festivals, and multitudes of new poems, songs, paintings, and other forms of artistic expression. And already the reaction of readers of the English translation of these series in America, Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and elsewhere is indicating a real globalization of interest, not only in reading the Ringing Cedars books, but in acting on the ideas they present as well, revealing new manifestations of a motherland that completely transcends national boundaries. And to think all this started from a single simple idea, which multiplied through its first faltering attempts at implementation, still keeps on blossoming and helping people all over the world take back their own motherland. Even as Vladimir Migre's blossoming series of publications started from a single simple proposal to write a book implanted in the thought of an inveterate non-writer, and this former non-writer initial choppy attempts have now evolved into a flourishing trademark style of poetic prose, which characterizes Book 3 and 4 of the series. How well we have succeeded on conveying this evolution of style in the English version, particularly the melodious effect his resulting poetic mode of expression can have on the one who reads it with a heart attuned to textual harmonies, will be up to you, the readers, to judge. As translator and editor, we have only to wish you as fascinating an experience in discovering this book on your own as we ourselves had in reading and co-translating it, not to mention co-editing the translation. For now we shall leave you with Anastasia's appeal from chapter 26. Even today, everyone can build a home. You must feel everything that I outline and mentally complete yourself the whole design, and let everyone else draw it along with me. Oh God, people, at least give it a try, I beg of you. We look forward to meeting you again on the pages of the next book, entitled Who Are We?, which, like co-creation, will offer ever greater hope for the world. Ottawa, Canada, John Woodsworth. Ozark Mountains, USA, Leonard Shirashkin, February 2006. Read to you by Nicole, November 2018.